Hey guys, so it is time for another monthly recap. So obviously October is probably one of my busiest months for filming, for watching horror movies, horror shows, just all the horror stuff is obviously coming out in the month of October. And I feel like because of that, I didn't actually get to watch all of the Halloween movies I normally do because there were just so many new horror movies that were coming out. And because of that, I did have to prioritize some things a little bit. So there are a few things that I DNF'd. I did not finish them because one, I heard that they didn't end up being good. So like, I don't really care that much to finish it, or I tried watching, well actually I tried watching all of them obviously, and I just knew that it wasn't going to be for me, so I didn't waste my time with them. And you're allowed to do that, you know, just because something has a lot of hype. If you're mid-movie or, you know, you start a movie or a show and it's just not, you're not feeling it, you can just turn it off, you know, it's not that serious. You're meant to be entertained at the end of the day. So for me, even though it is my job to review movies and shows and horror things, I still DNF things all the time. And I'll go into some of those things that I DNF'd because they might be a little bit controversial. There were not only so many movies being released in theaters, I think I did four or five horror movie reviews this month, but also to streaming. Like, I feel like every streaming platform had their own October release. So if you weren't able to get access to many of those things because of where you live, I would really recommend looking into NordVPN. NordVPN makes it so easy to connect to any country with just one click, and then you refresh your streaming service, and it's just like you're in that country and you have access to all of their horror streaming. And not only that, that's obviously my favorite feature about NordVPN that I utilize all the time, but it also protects you from cybersecurity threats no matter where you are. If you are traveling, you're at a coffee shop, you're at home. And obviously hacking is a huge issue, and the biggest solution to this is to use different usernames and passwords for different websites. But that's really difficult to do, to remember all of your passwords for the specific website. So NordVPN also offers NordPass, which is so convenient. It helps you not only create really strong passwords, but it also stores them for you so you don't actually have to remember them. So if you're currently using the same username and password on multiple websites, this makes it really easy for hackers to gain access to multiple accounts that you have, whether it be Netflix, Google, your banking. And this is actually the most common threat of hacking, and that comes from credential stuffing or password attacks. NordVPN not only protects and stores your passwords, but they also offer two-factor authentication and the dark web monitor, so you will get notified as soon as your information is leaked onto the dark web. And you can use it on up to 6 devices with just one account, so all of your technology is protected. NordVPN has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so make sure you go to nordvpn.com/PossessedbyHorror to get a 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 4 months for free. So starting off the month of October, I was actually in Los Angeles, and of course we were doing some horror movie marathoning because I am pregnant and there wasn't a lot I could actually do in LA. So horror movie marathons it was. So we watched X that weekend and also Halloween Kills. So you may or may not know that I was actually really excited for the movie Fall that was released in theaters, and I just was not able to make it to the theater in time to see it. So I was very disappointed. I was able to track it down and I finally watched it in the month of October. For best friends Becky and Hunter, life is all about conquering fears and pushing limits. However, after they climb 2,000 feet to the top of a remote abandoned radio tower, they find themselves stranded with no way down. Now, I could have sworn, like, I would put so much money on the fact that I thought that this movie was made by the same people who made 47 Meters Down. I swear I saw that somewhere, but then I was looking into like the different creators, the producer, the writer, the director, and I couldn't see any correlation to 47 Meters Down, which is very bizarre because it is literally the same movie, just instead of really, really deep water, we have a really, really high radio tower. So of course, if you're a fan of 47 Meters Down, this pans out pretty much the exact same way. It's very, very similar in plot as far as like the beginning story and like the trauma associated, and then the friend or slash sister is like really pushing for her to like move on or face her fears or whatever it may be. You know, that corny, cheesy kind of stuff that just kind of sets it up to be like why they even got on the tower in the first place, because obviously this is a dumb decision. And that's why the concept alone is pretty unrealistic, okay? Like, I don't think that any any real person in the real world would actually make the decisions that they make in these types of movies. But that's part of the fun of them, you know, they're unrealistic, they're cheesy and kind of shallow, to be honest. Like, although the story is meant to be kind of deep, like this girl goes through a traumatic event and her friend is making her face her fear of heights and falling, and you think that would be pretty deep, but it's really not. That doesn't make them any less entertaining, though. There's something about these kinds of movies, like Fall and 47 Meters Down, that are just so rewatchable to me and very entertaining. Do I give it a very high rating? Absolutely not. I think this one's like a 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't great. I really don't like how they wrap up these kinds of movies, if I'm being honest. But it's fine. It's entertaining. And sometimes that's all we want. We don't need anything super deep or dramatic. We want to cringe at a scene that makes us uncomfortable because they're so high up. You know what I mean? If you have a fear of heights, this movie will be absolutely unbearable for you. There was a scene that I couldn't even watch, and I do not have a fear of heights. So just be warned, it is the ultimate fear of heights movie. That is the whole, like, part of the horror in this movie, is just, they're so high up. But it was fine. It's not great, you know? It's not great, but it's a solid entertainment kind of movie. I don't know. Then I watched Terrifier 2. I did a whole review on this that I will link up here. I'm really happy to see it doing so well and having it expand to many, many theaters. I think that's really fun. Then I watched The Ring 2. I was kind of feeling the Ring movies this month, I'm not gonna lie. They're not very Halloween-y, but they are very fall. I think it might have been a little bit overcasty for the first time this year that day, so I think that's why I popped that one on. Okay, so now on to our first DNF movie that I just could not finish. It just, not for me, and there was no point in me finishing it, to be honest. And that is The Munsters. Now, this is Rob Zombie's newest movie, and it is, of course, very different from anything that he's ever done before. This is a PG-rated movie. Again, very different for Rob Zombie. And I think this works for some people, but I heard a lot of things that it just wasn't that great. I tried watching it. I think I got through 20 minutes or so. And while the performances are like fun and goofy, this just so goofy that it's not my kind of movie. It's just not. Now, it's actually like a prequel to the show. And I did watch the show growing up on my big, giant box TV that did not have a remote, and it was like a little dial that you click. And I had like 3 channels. I would watch The Munsters on it sometimes. I'm not like the biggest fan by any means, but yeah, I was excited about Rob Zombie's take on The Munsters, but it ended up being so over the top, goofy with like sound effects and everything, and I understand he's going for the TV show kind of vibe, and like it's a PG rating, so like it's also for kids, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get through it. I could not do it, and I'm sorry, life is too short for me to just watch a movie just for the sake of talking about it for 2 seconds in a video, you know? Big fan of Rob Zombie. Loved seeing him at Aftershock this year again. But just in general, there's The Munsters, I'm gonna give a pass on. Next up, we have a movie called Deadstream. Now, this is a Shudder original that was added in October. Another found footage style movie. A disgraced internet personality attempts to win back his followers by live streaming one night alone in a haunted house. But when he accidentally pisses off a vengeful spirit, his big comeback event becomes a real-time fight for his life. This is very similar to me to Dashcam in tone, and I know it's gonna turn some people off because Dashcam is very controversial of a movie that came out this year. I'm a big fan of Dashcam. I really love Dashcam. I like it more than Deadstream. Deadstream is like kind of like what they wanted to do with Dashcam, with making an annoying protagonist going through like a horror event. So if you're a fan of that setup, but you weren't really into Annie Hardy in Dashcam, which I fully understand, this one's a little bit toned down version of that. Less offensive, less in your face. Still an annoying protagonist of like an annoying influencer, an annoying streamer, but in a way more subtle way than they did with Dashcam. Overall, I really like Deadstream. I think it's fun. I did find the protagonist a little bit too grating, like when he would yell or scream. I don't like the pitch of his voice or something because it would just get really under my skin, and he, towards the end, just ends up screaming all the time, and that I was just getting overstimulated, to be honest. Like, just very... It was just grating. And a lot of it kind of felt like a parody of a found footage movie. So the levity of this movie kind of took me out of any of the horror that was going on. Versus Dashcam, there's that levity, but it's like serious humor, I guess, because it's like not funny. So while I was not laughing with Annie Hardy, the horror remained effective. That makes any sense. I just feel like Deadstream feels a little bit more like found footage camp because the humor that he's going through is funny because we all kind of know live streamers like this or like influencers that are like this who have made apology videos, and like that's funny. So because of that, the horror wasn't that great, but I do think visually some of the horror was really good. There were a couple really solid jump scares in this. I like the practical effects in it. So it's a fun movie. I definitely recommend giving it a try. And also I'm just really loving all the found footage movies this year. I feel like found footage never really died, but it definitely slowed down a lot after 2010. Maybe? Is that just me? But this year we've gotten four found footage movies, so I think found footage horror is back. Then I watched Significant Other. This is another one that was released to streaming. This came out on Paramount Plus, and not a lot of people were talking about it, which I was surprised because it does star Micah Monroe, who is fastly becoming a great scream queen, in my opinion. This follows a young couple who take a remote backpacking trip through the Pacific Northwest and face sinister events, leading them to realize that everything about the place is not as it seems. This kind of felt very reminiscent of the movie Honeymoon to me, which I love, highly recommend. So if you're a fan of that one, then definitely watch Significant Other. Even though that seems like if you know what's going on in Honeymoon, you can assume that that's what's happening in Significant Other, but I think that it is still a very surprising movie. Like, I thought I knew everything that was going on, and I was still blindsided by some things. And I really liked that it wasn't super predictable because it felt that way for so long in this movie, but I really liked the surprises throughout. Now, that being said, I didn't find this movie particularly scary or horrifying or anything. It kind of feels a little action-y, a little dramatic at times, and I just don't feel the tension there. I don't feel the horror coming from this movie. So it's definitely more of like a thriller with some drama in there. So sometimes that's what you want. There's definitely more horror in Honeymoon, but I did really like Significant Other overall, especially for it being a straight to Paramount Plus movie. I think it ended up being really good. And although it did lose me a little bit in the end, I still highly recommend it. Then I watched Rings. I am in the minority of liking this movie, but I'm a little bit biased because I like any movie taking place in this universe. So Mr. Harrigan's Phone I watched next, and this is one that was like requested for me to review, and I'm not sure why, because after watching it, I was like, there's nothing to say. There's nothing to talk about in this. It's not a horror movie. I think it's because it's a story written by Stephen King. Like, it's based on a short story by Stephen King. People are anticipating that it's scary in some way. That's not the case. Not that I found. So I'm not gonna review it. I'm not gonna talk about it. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It was just a very average movie to me, and kind of predictable. So I don't know, wasn't a fan. It's not for me. So then I was like, okay, I gotta get some Halloween movies in here because what am I doing? There's like no Halloween movies going on. I'm just watching a bunch of new stuff and Rings. So I need some Halloween in my life. I ended up watching Hell House LLC. And then, of course, Halloween Ends. I will link my full review of Halloween Ends up here. Ended up not being good. Ryan had mentioned he'd never seen Halloween 2018, but he loves Kills, hated Ends. So I'm like, let me show you another good Halloween movie, Halloween 2018. So we watched that. And then I watched Boo, which you can find on Peacock. This is, I think it's from 2002, I want to say. I briefly talked about this in a recent video, I don't remember which one, about a group of friends who spend Halloween in an abandoned hospital. And this one was actually way more impressive than I thought it was going to be after I saw the beginning and how badly acted it is. I mentioned it before, this is some of the worst acting I've ever seen, which is so sad to me because the practical effects in this and just the effects in general were pretty good for 2002, and I really like the story. I think the story is really entertaining. So if you've seen it all, oh, it was in my tier list for Halloween movies. If you've seen all Halloween movies there is to watch, try giving Boo a chance. If you look past the acting, it's actually not a bad movie. A couple more Halloween movies I squeezed in there. 31. 31 by Rob Zombie, I typically love. But this one I felt highly uncomfortable watching most of the time. And it was a very different viewing experience than I've had before. And then this is when I started to realize that I just can't do gore right now, being pregnant. Gore has affected me so much more. You'd think Terrifier 2 would be the one to wake me up to this. I did feel uncomfortable in that as well, but I didn't recognize it as something pregnancy related. And then I watched 31 and I was like trying to multitask by doing something else at the time. And I was just so overwhelmed by the screaming and the gore and the blood. And I'm like, I'm just not having a good time right now. This is not what I want to be watching. We ended up watching all of it, but it just was a different experience. Like, I would rate this lower now, seeing it being pregnant. I can't do movies like that right now. So I've been avoiding any and all gory movies, which most Halloween movies are indeed gory. So I could do Supernatural. I like Supernatural movies right now, but I can't be doing a lot of gore. Even though then I watch Trick or Treat, and that does have some gore in it, but it's a lot more fun, you know, and it's an anthology, so there's like layers to it. But Trick or Treat is a must to watch every single year. So I recently read the book My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and of course I read it because the movie came out in September, at the end of September, and I never ended up watching it because I knew I wanted to read the book first. So I ended up watching the movie. I'm gonna do a whole book to movie, or book versus movie comparison for this, but I will say the book's better than the movie. I'll just leave it at that, okay? Next up, I got an early screener for Wendell Wild, which is a Netflix movie that's out now. When I'm posting this video, it's out currently, but I did do an Instagram giveaway for early screeners for this, so I know a lot of you enjoyed this movie before it was released to Netflix, so I hope you did enjoy it. You can follow me over on Instagram if you want to be a part of these giveaways in the future. I usually do them on my Instagram stories or sometimes in a static post. Anyway, Wendell Wild is the newest movie from Henry Selick, who of course brought us Coraline, a great Halloween movie as well, and Nightmare Before Christmas. The two devious demon brothers, Wendell and Wild, have to face their arch enemy with the help of the nun, Sister Helly, who is notorious for expelling demons. However, the brothers are not only plagued by her, but also by her altar boys. That's a really interesting description for what this movie ended up being. I hadn't read that really before. This movie's a lot more than that. The story in this movie is so complex for a stop motion movie like this. I was actually really impressed by it. It never felt messy, but there were so many things going on in this movie. It was way, way more than I expected. I absolutely loved Wendell Wild, to be honest, and stop motion movies aren't 100% my thing, but I love Coraline, of course, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that I would really like this one. I will 100% definitely be rewatching this. I definitely want to own it. I think it is such a fun movie. I was a huge fan. I think it's PG-13 as well, so it has some humor in it that is appropriate for adults. And of course, Key and Peele are the best parts of this movie. Key and Peele play Wendell Wild, and they are hands down my favorite thing about this movie. Like, they're so entertaining. They're genuinely so funny together. The humor in this works so well. I normally don't laugh at like animated movies or like children's movies or movies marketed towards a younger audience like this, but this one was genuinely funny. Like, as an adult, I laughed out loud, so I would highly recommend giving it a try. I think it's like Coraline, where it's very appropriate for Halloween time given the content, but I also think it's great year-round as well. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is another DNF, and this is the controversial one because I don't want to do it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mike Flanagan. I don't want to finish The Midnight Club. I have watched 4 episodes of The Midnight Club, and I think, there's 10 usually in his shows. I'm not going to waste my time with it, you know? I've heard it's pretty unsatisfying. I've heard it's not that great. Like, the ending's not good. And after 4 episodes and I'm still not getting that classic Mike Flanagan horror that I got so many times before, it's a little bit frustrating. I just feel like Hill House is such a magnificent show, like hands down my favorite horror TV show of all time. He captures family trauma so well, the emotional sides of things, but also the horror. He knows how to make something genuinely scary, and I'm getting none of that. I'm getting none of those things in The Midnight Club. I guess I'm just confused by a lot of decisions made for this show, how unlikable characters are. It's not good, and I'm not gonna waste my time with it. I already don't enjoy shows as it is, like horror TV shows, I rarely watch. Like, I've seen very few. I don't know why. I just can't really get into them. Hill House is kind of a fluke. I really like The Terror as well, season 1. But beyond that, I'm just not a horror show kind of gal. So if I'm not into it after 4 episodes, I'm not gonna watch it. Same thing with Stranger Things. I watched a whole season of that. I watched season 1, was not into it, could not care less about finishing it. Because you don't have to. You don't have to finish things just because you've started them. You know, when it comes to media and entertainment with books, movies, shows, things like that, don't waste your time on things that you're not interested in. Don't force yourself to watch something just because it's popular right now. So that's how I feel about Midnight Club, to be honest. I'm not interested. I think I got other things to watch. I think you'd rather me watch more movies that I could review and talk about and recommend in the future than The Midnight Club. You know about it already. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And I think that's simple, Anyway, that's everything that I watched in the month of October. So let me know what your favorite thing is that you've seen this month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.